Did you ever have to pretend everything was fine when it really wasn't?
So picture this. I'm standing in my kitchen, still holding the grocery bag I just brought in, frozen in place as my phone buzzes for the third time in under a minute. It's the family group chat. The same one where I've been coordinating flights, hotel check-ins, rental cars, and dinner reservations for the past 3 months like a part-time, unpaid travel agent. At first, I think they're just asking something dumb again, like who's bringing sunscreen or whether TSA still allows peanut butter. But no. The first message I see when I unlock my phone knocks the air out of me like someone punched me clean in the chest. We talked, and we just think maybe this year you should sit it out. It's been a lot lately. The trip's about relaxation. The message isn't even signed. Not even a love you or a let's talk. Just a clean, cold exile. And then, like sharks circling after the first drop of blood, the others start chiming in. We really need some drama-free time this year. That one's from my younger sister Kayla, who, might I remind you, cried into a bottle of Barefoot Moscato on my couch 2 months ago because she couldn't pay her rent. Guess who covered it? Yeah, that was me. Again. Derek, our brother, follows up with some garbage about just wanting to reset without heavy energy. Heavy energy. That's what I am to them now. Not the one who fronted the deposit for the beach house. Not the one who organized the birthday dinner itinerary or secured the group rate for airfare by booking 6 seats on her personal credit card. Just heavy energy. They called me drama, but let me tell you something. I never raised my voice in that group chat. I never picked a fight. Never once brought up the money they owed me, or the fact that every single year I was the one eating the costs when somebody canceled last minute or decided their boyfriend wanted to come too, and we had to get a bigger place. I kept my mouth shut. I smiled through every backhanded compliment, every "you're just so type A," like it wasn't their way of calling me a control freak. I made their damn vacation happen year after year, and the one time I ask for something simple, like people confirming their arrival dates before I call the host, I get labeled too much. The irony is, I didn't even want to go this year. Not really. I wanted to, sure, in the way that someone wants to feel included. But I wasn't excited about it. I wasn't dreaming of sandcastles and family bonding. I was dreading being the one who made sure Mom took her blood pressure meds every morning, who double-checked Derek didn't lose his passport again, who handled the complaints when the Airbnb's Wi-Fi wasn't fast enough. I was going because I always do. Because if I don't, nothing gets done. But apparently, that made me a buzzkill. So I stood there, groceries sweating on the counter, my hand gripping the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles turned white, and I said nothing. Not a word in the chat. Just read every message like it was a script written by people who never saw me as anything but useful until I asked to be treated with basic respect. And that's when it hit me. I had all the power. They didn't know it yet, but the entire trip was running through accounts I set up. The vacation fund? That was a shared account I opened and invited them to contribute to. You want to guess how much they actually sent? Kayla put in $200 total. Derek sent nothing. Mom wrote a check that bounced. The rest? Over $5,000? All me. Because I make more, and because I've been lucky in my career. They say that like my job fell out of the sky, not like I worked every weekend of my 20s while they were out living. I paid for the house. I booked the cars. The flights? All under my name. I paid extra so everyone could sit together. It was supposed to be my gift. My annual no one has to worry peace offering. And somehow I was the one who got cut. I didn't cry. I didn't text back. I didn't beg to be included, didn't ask for an explanation or a vote or a second chance to prove I could be more low-key. I just opened my laptop, logged into the vacation account, and started clicking. Close account. Cancel booking. Refund request. Rental cancellation. Seat deselection. Every single reservation began to unravel with the click of a mouse, and with each cancellation confirmation that hit my inbox, I felt something in my chest loosen. Not joy, not relief, just a quiet release, like exhaling for the first time in weeks. They called me the drama? Then fine. Let's see how they handle a little chaos without their scapegoat. And still, I didn't say a word. But that's when the call started. First Kayla, then Mom, then Derek, who never calls. All within the hour. Messages stacking up like a digital guilt parade. One from Kayla read, "Did you cancel the house? It says we have no reservation." Derek said, "Dude, what the hell is going on?" And then came the kicker from Mom. "Can we please just talk? Don't do this." But I was already gone. I had left the chat. Logged out. Shut down. I was done. And here's the thing, they're not even mad about what I did. Not really. They're mad that for the first time, they realized what I actually did. What I always did. And now they're scrambling to fix something they never even noticed was broken, because I was the one holding it together in the first place. Tell me something, if your family cut you out of the trip you paid for, would you take the high road? Or would you do exactly what I did and finally let them feel what it's like to stand on their own? Because I'm telling you right now, the silence from me is louder than anything I could have said. There's a strange kind of calm that comes right after the decision is made, not the loud, fiery kind that comes with slammed doors or shouted accusations, but a colder, slower kind of stillness that settles in your bones like winter air, sharp, quiet, final. That's what it felt like the morning after they pushed me out. I woke up before the sun, sat on the edge of my bed in that foggy moment between dreams and dread, and stared at the login screen for the vacation fund account I had opened 3 months earlier. The same one I had invited my family into with that familiar mix of hope and obligation I couldn't seem to shake no matter how many times they disappointed me. It had started like it always did, me offering to handle the logistics since, of course, no one else ever volunteered. They'd all say it with a laugh, a shrug, a lazy, "Rachel's got it," like I was the designated adult in a family full of grown-ass toddlers. But now I was the one with the keys, and for once, I didn't feel guilty for turning them. They had no idea how much of the trip depended on me, not in theory, not in metaphor, but in the actual nuts and bolts of every single thing they had planned. The Airbnb confirmation was in my name. The rental cars? My credit card. The airline tickets? Group reservation, all booked under my travel portal account. Even the restaurant reservations that Kayla had been bragging about to her friends were tied to the itinerary spreadsheet I'd built in my lunch breaks and updated after work. I had spent weeks coordinating time zones and dietary preferences and flight transfers and toddler naps like it was my job. Because to them, it kind of was. And now, they were about to learn what happens when the person who does all the invisible work decides to stop pretending it's appreciated. I started with the Airbnb. It took all of 2 clicks: log in, locate reservation, cancel. A pop-up window asked me if I was sure, with a big red button that said yes, cancel reservation. I stared at it for a second, the way people look at big red buttons in movies right before the explosion. Then I clicked it, and just like that, the beach house was gone. Next was the car rental. 3 SUVs booked through a family plan I'd managed to negotiate with a corporate discount, all on my card with a backup on Derek's, except Derek's card had expired 3 months ago and he never updated it. I canceled the first car. Then the second. Then the third. The system automatically notified the drivers. I could practically hear the confused texts they were probably sending each other in that moment, but my phone was off. Notifications silenced. I wasn't interested in their confusion. Not yet. The flights came next. This one felt a little more surgical. I had to log into the airline portal, go into each passenger's individual reservation, cancel their seats, and confirm the refund policy. Most of it came back to me in credits or points, because, surprise, I'd used my miles. Kayla's seat? Mine. Derek's? Also mine. Mom's? Bought during a holiday sale with a promo code from a client I hadn't even told them about. All of it? Mine. And now? Also gone. By the time I was done, I had a neat little pile of cancellation confirmations in my inbox, a travel fund account with only my money in it, and a group chat I was no longer a part of. There was something deeply satisfying about the quiet after the storm, a kind of absence of noise that felt more honest than any of the fake gratitude I'd been given over the years. No more, "Thank you for organizing everything, you're a lifesaver," said through gritted teeth and followed by passive-aggressive complaints about how I take things too seriously. I made myself coffee, strong and bitter like the moment deserved, and sat down at the kitchen table, watching the sunlight stretch across the floor like nothing had changed. But something had changed me. For the first time, I wasn't going to explain myself, defend myself, or beg them to see how much I had done. I wasn't going to send an essay in the group chat or ask anyone to acknowledge what I carried for them. They made their choice, so I made mine. And then the texts started rolling in, first from Kayla, Rach, did you cancel the Airbnb? Then Derek, always the slowest to catch up, dude, the flights are gone. Are you messing with us? And finally, Mom, who went straight for the guilt dagger, Rachel. This is not okay. Please call me. Please. But I didn't call. I didn't respond. I sat there, sipping my coffee, reading their panic like a newspaper column, one I'd already predicted before they even typed it. They weren't angry because they'd lost the trip. They were angry because they had lost control of the person they thought would always fix things, always forgive them, always come back no matter how badly they treated her. The thing is, they didn't realize I wasn't reacting emotionally, I was reacting logically. The logic was simple. If I wasn't wanted on the trip, why would my money be? If my presence was too much, then they could try building the vacation from scratch without it. They could book their own flights, their own house, their own damn rental cars. Let them call Expedia and sit on hold for 30 minutes trying to reschedule a family of 6. Let them find out that beachfront rentals in July don't come cheap when you wait till the last second. And then, a part of me started to wonder, what exactly did they expect? Did they think they could ice me out and still reap the rewards of my labor? Did they think I'd just hand them the trip like some kind of martyr, smiling politely while they sipped margaritas on a porch I paid for, pretending like the group was better off without me? They called me dramatic. They said I brought stress into every situation. But what they never said, not once in all those years, was that they needed me. They never said thank you like they meant it. Never took one piece of the burden off my shoulders. They just leaned back, let me carry the weight, and mocked the way I strained under it. But I'm done straining. I'm done explaining. I'm done fixing messes I didn't create. Let them feel the tension I used to absorb for them. Let them scramble to rebuild what I took down in a morning. And let them sit in the quiet I left behind, because this time, I'm not coming back just because they asked nicely. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't decided if this is revenge or release. Maybe it's both. But either way, I slept better that night than I had in years. The thing about memory, real memory, not the kind you recite to win an argument or embellish to look better in front of someone new, but that private, sometimes painful archive you carry in the back of your mind, is that it rarely lies. Even if you try your best to pretend it's no big deal. The morning after I canceled everything and turned off my phone for the second time, I found myself sitting on the couch with an old cup of coffee, cold and half full, thinking not about the trip they'd now have to rebuild on their own, but about all the years leading up to this moment. And the more I sat there, the more it felt like I had been living in a story someone else wrote for me, one where I was never really the hero or even the villain, just the designated fixer, the background character who existed to make everyone else's life more convenient. There's one memory that came back first, not because it was the most traumatic or dramatic, but because it was quiet and ordinary, and somehow that made it harder to forget. It was the summer 3 years ago when we all went to Asheville for a family weekend, one of those low-key getaways Mom insisted we needed after a rough year. I had handled everything, found the cabin, reserved the dates, even paid extra for the hot tub because Derek could really use it for his back after falling off a scooter the month before. The night we got there, I realized the fridge was empty. No one had picked up the groceries like they said they would. Kayla was already on her second glass of wine. Mom was stretched out on the patio claiming jet lag, despite the fact we drove 6 hours, and Derek was complaining about the lack of ESPN. I drove 25 minutes each way to a tiny overpriced market, paid for everything, cooked dinner, and then watched as they picked apart the meal. Too much salt, not enough heat, too slow. No one thanked me. Not once. And I remember going to bed that night thinking, maybe next year someone else will take the lead. But no one ever did. That's the thing people never talk about when they glamorize family loyalty or those Hallmark-style reunions where everyone laughs around a bonfire and someone strums an acoustic guitar. Behind those scenes is always someone sweating over the food, managing the egos, arranging the rides, cleaning up the mess. In my family, that person was always me. And not because I'm naturally organized or overly type A or enjoy control like they love to whisper behind my back. It was because if I didn't do it, no one else would, and I got tired of seeing everything fall apart. But the cost of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who handles it without complaint, is that people start to believe your willingness equals indestructibility. They stop asking how you're doing. They stop seeing your effort. And eventually, they start resenting you for the very weight you carry for them, as if by making it look manageable, you're somehow showing off. That's what happened with my family. Somewhere along the way, my help became a threat to their comfort, and instead of gratitude, I got rolled eyes and side comments about how everything has to be Rachel's way. What they never stopped to consider was that my way existed because their way didn't. There was no Derek's way or Kayla's version of planning. There was just me, Google Docs, 4 different group texts, and a lot of late nights trying to coordinate logistics while they binge-watched Netflix. And it wasn't just the vacations. It was birthdays, holidays, last-minute emergencies, surprise car breakdowns, broken leases, babysitting requests, and financial favors cloaked in jokes. Just spot me, I'll get you back next week. But the money never came, and I stopped asking. I told myself it didn't matter, that what we were doing, what I was doing, was for the good of the family. Because that's how I was raised, family first, no matter what. Except it always felt like I was the only one living by that rule, while the rest of them coasted on the benefit of the doubt and called it love. The worst part? I let it happen. Every time I said yes when I should have said no, every time I picked up the phone at 2 in the morning, every time I covered a bill or rebooked a flight or canceled a reservation and rebooked a better one without ever being asked. I gave them permission to treat me like the family concierge. I let them believe that I didn't need anything in return. And now that I had finally taken a step back, no, a step out, they were left standing in a mess they didn't know how to clean up, confused not because I changed, but because I finally stopped pretending I was okay with how things were. It was later that afternoon, somewhere around 4 o'clock, when the doorbell rang. I ignored it at first, assuming it was a neighbor or a package delivery. But then it rang again, and a third time, and I recognized the rhythm, too hesitant for a stranger, too persistent for a casual visit. I got up, opened the door, and there she was. Kayla. Her eyes were red, her mascara uneven, her hair pulled into one of those messy buns she wears when she's either emotionally wrecked or hungover. This time it looked like both. She didn't say hi. She just stood there for a second, looked past me into the living room, and then back at my face like she was searching for a softer version of me that she might still know. I didn't know they were going to say that to you, she started, voice low, breaking. I didn't vote you out or anything. I just didn't think you'd actually cancel everything. I didn't move. I didn't invite her in. Instead, I asked one question, simple, cold, honest. Did you try to stop them? She froze. It wasn't a complicated question. It didn't require a story or a defense or a carefully worded apology. It required one thing, the truth. And the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Eventually, she said something like, "It just all happened so fast, and you were getting so intense, and we just thought maybe some space would help," but none of it landed because none of it answered the question. She didn't try. Not really. Maybe she didn't throw the first stone, but she didn't stop the others from throwing theirs, and now she was standing in the wreckage pretending like her hands were clean. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything cruel. I just told her I needed time, and then I closed the door quietly, gently, but firmly. And as I leaned against it, I felt that same strange calm return, a calm not born from revenge, but from finally choosing myself over their comfort. They had rewritten the narrative for years, painted me as controlling, difficult, dramatic, because it suited them to believe that their chaos was my fault. But now I was writing a new version, and in this one, I wasn't the villain or the caretaker. I was just done. It's strange how silence, when it stretches on long enough, starts to resemble a kind of peace, even when it's loaded with everything unspoken and unresolved. That was the atmosphere in my apartment during the days that followed Kayla's unannounced doorstep performance, the kind that felt more like a reluctant apology disguised as concern rather than any real attempt at accountability. I didn't hear from her again after I closed the door, but I knew the family was talking, knew the group chat, now with me officially excommunicated, had become a flurry of speculation, frustration, and probably a few passive-aggressive jokes at my expense, because that was the rhythm they knew best. Minimize, deflect, blame, then pretend everything will somehow reset without ever being addressed. And then, as expected, came the call from my mother. Not a text, not an email, not one of those voice memos she likes to send when she's feeling too emotional to form sentences in real time. A proper, old-fashioned phone call, complete with 2 rings before it went to voicemail, followed by a second attempt a few minutes later. I let the first one go, let it hang in the void like a balloon with no weight. But the second time, for reasons I still can't quite explain, habit, curiosity, a flicker of loyalty buried under a layer of resentment, I picked up. Her voice, when it came through, was soft but controlled, carefully modulated like she'd rehearsed it a few times in front of a mirror. "I just want to talk," she said, "no attacks, no guilt trips. Just a conversation." And I believed her. At least enough to stay on the line. We skipped pleasantries, as if both of us knew there wasn't time for small talk. She launched straight into it, the way she always did when something mattered more than she wanted to admit. "Rachel," she said, exhaling as if the name itself carried more weight than usual, "this whole thing has gotten out of hand. You canceling everything, it just created a mess." I let the words sit there a second, then answered with a calm I didn't feel. "No. What created the mess was excluding me from something I planned and paid for." There was silence on the other end. Not long, but long enough to suggest discomfort. "We didn't exclude you," she replied, her tone shifting slightly, defense seeping in. "We just thought, with everything going on, maybe you needed a break. From all the stress." I almost laughed, but it wasn't the funny kind of laugh. It was the bitter, hollow kind that doesn't quite make it past your throat. "Stress you created," I said. "Stress I managed." And when I asked for a little clarity, I became the problem. Her response came quick, almost too quick. "You always need everything your way, Rachel. You can be intense. We just wanted a peaceful trip." There it was, the line I knew was coming. The label they'd clung to for years every time I showed any form of emotion that didn't serve their comfort. Intense. It had become their way of turning my boundaries into flaws, my needs into disruptions, my effort into a burden. "Peaceful," I repeated, letting the word roll around in my mouth like it tasted bad. "You wanted peace, so you cut out the one person making the trip happen." "That's not fair," she said, and I could hear the hurt now, the wobble in her voice that always followed confrontation, the trembling edge of someone trying to hold on to authority they know is slipping. "We didn't think you'd go this far. We didn't think you'd shut it all down." And that's when I realized something that should have been obvious a long time ago. They never thought I had it in me. They believed that I needed them so badly, or felt so tethered to being the caretaker, that I'd keep showing up no matter how many times they pushed me aside. They confused love with obedience, and loyalty with silence. "You thought I'd just swallow it," I said, not a question, but a fact. "You thought I'd keep doing the work, even after you made it clear I wasn't wanted." Her voice cracked just a little then, barely noticeable unless you were listening for it. "It wasn't about not wanting you. We just didn't want things to get dramatic." And that was the moment it all crystallized, not just this vacation, not just the group chat drama, but the years of being labeled as too much, too emotional, too controlling, too sensitive, too anything that required them to take a look at themselves. Every time I tried to address something real, something painful, they called it drama. Every time I set a boundary, they called it control. Every time I asked for respect, they acted like I was asking for a crown. I told her I had to go. She didn't stop me. She said, "I hope we can talk again soon." I said, "Maybe." That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I booked a vacation for myself. Not a family trip, not a compromise, not a group activity where I had to juggle everyone's allergies and hotel preferences. A solo getaway. Italy. Florence, to be specific. I used the leftover money from the vacation fund, my money, the money they never contributed to, despite all their empty promises and half-hearted excuses. I booked the flight, the hotel, even signed up for a pasta-making class. I chose it all for myself, with no consideration for anyone else's taste or convenience. And when I arrived, a few days later, jet-lagged but oddly weightless, I took a picture of the view from my hotel balcony, a small, crooked street lined with sun-washed buildings and drying laundry hanging from windows like flags of survival. And I posted it online with a caption that said everything I needed it to say without saying much at all. Turns out I am the drama. I don't know what they thought when they saw it. Maybe they rolled their eyes. Maybe they laughed. Maybe they screenshot it and shared it in the group chat like a little piece of proof that I'd finally gone off the rails. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't planning around them. I wasn't waiting for them to show up, to notice, to apologize, to do better. I was just living messy, selfish, unapologetic, and it felt more honest than anything I'd ever done for them. And deep down, I think they knew it. Because no one said a word. And silence, I've learned, is its own kind of confession. When I touched down at the airport after 10 days of absolute, unfiltered freedom from obligation, from expectation, from the suffocating grip of unspoken family roles, I realized the air felt different, sharper somehow. As if I had left one version of myself back in Florence and was returning with a newer one, not entirely healed or hardened, but certainly reassembled. My suitcase rolled a little lighter, not because I brought back less, but because I carried myself differently now. I moved through customs and the terminal and the parking lot like someone who no longer felt the need to justify the weight she chose to put down. And yet, as I sat in my car, the sun setting in pale streaks over the distant hills, I knew that what waited for me beyond that airport, in the corners of my inbox and the cracks of my voicemail, wasn't silence. Not really, but the slow, inevitable confrontation that comes after you decide to stop playing the role people wrote for you. They hadn't spoken to me since the post. Not a single text, call, comment, or even the passive-aggressive indirects that used to appear like clockwork on Kayla's Instagram stories whenever something disrupted her delicate perception of fairness. Derek, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, had blocked me entirely, not out of anger necessarily, but out of sheer cowardice. Unwilling or unable to face the fact that the sister he'd leaned on for years had finally decided to stand up and walk away. Kayla, who once depended on me like a second wallet and a part-time therapist, had pivoted so abruptly into silence that it felt like she was performing penance by pretending I no longer existed. And my mother, whose voice still echoed in my head from our last conversation, hadn't reached out again after that final, clipped maybe. But the mailbox was a different story. It was only after I dragged my suitcase up the stairs, unlocked the door, and exhaled the kind of breath that only comes when you finally return to the space that still smells like your own skin, that I noticed the envelope, no stamp, no mailing label. Just my name written in careful, rounded cursive that had once filled my childhood lunch notes with affirmations and reminders about field trip money. I didn't open it right away. I didn't even touch it. I made tea, unpacked my toiletries, let the kettle whistle and cool, and only then, when the room was dim and quiet, did I finally sit down at the kitchen table and break the seal. There were 4 paragraphs, each one more carefully constructed than the last, and every sentence seemed to carry the weight of someone who had been forced, maybe for the first time, to reckon with the version of events they had always believed to be true. She began by acknowledging what she never had before, not just the logistics, not just the effort, but the emotional weight I had carried on behalf of the entire family for years. She wrote that it had always been easier to believe I was controlling than to admit I was the only one willing to step up when no one else did. She said she regretted not noticing sooner that every vacation, every event, every little success we managed to celebrate as a family had been made possible because I had been willing to take the brunt of the stress, the cost, the responsibility. Then, in the 3rd paragraph, she wrote something that stuck to my ribs in a way nothing else in that letter did, not because it was dramatic or sentimental, but because it was painfully honest in its simplicity. We didn't realize how much you were doing. Maybe we didn't want to know. I read that sentence twice. Then a third time. Because that was the truth of it, wasn't it? It wasn't just that they hadn't seen it, it was that they had chosen not to. They preferred the narrative in which I was the storm, not the shelter. The problem, not the solution. The complication, not the cornerstone. The last paragraph didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't ask me to come back. It didn't beg or guilt or manipulate. It simply offered an opening, a sliver of space where conversation might exist again, if and when I was ready. It ended with her name. Not love, mom, not even mom. Just Susan, a name that felt startlingly formal, as if she knew she could no longer assume the closeness that had once gone unchallenged. I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and set it down next to my tea, now cold and untouched. There was no clear feeling that followed, no surge of anger, no release of tears, no righteous satisfaction. Just a strange stillness, like I was standing at the edge of a decision that no longer demanded to be made immediately. Because here's what no one tells you about walking away: it doesn't always come with closure, or applause, or some grand sense of liberation. Sometimes, it just leaves you with questions that echo louder in the quiet, questions like, was I protecting them, or just enabling them? Did I do the right thing, or did I simply trade one kind of exhaustion for another? Was the silence a boundary, or a wall? I didn't have those answers. Not then. Maybe not ever. But I did know this. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I didn't feel pulled into a role I didn't write. I didn't feel like I was constantly negotiating my worth in exchange for inclusion. I looked out the window, watched the last streaks of daylight disappear into the blur of city lights, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest, not peace exactly, but something adjacent to it. A kind of neutrality. The absence of resentment. The beginning of indifference. And that, perhaps, is more powerful than forgiveness. Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is stop needing the apology. Stop waiting for the phone call. Stop aching to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. I didn't respond to the letter. Not right away. I left it on the table, beside my cup, beside the life I was learning to live on my own terms, and I went to bed without carrying them into my dreams. And maybe tomorrow, or next week, or never, I'll decide what comes next. But tonight? Tonight, I'm not anyone's fixer, anyone's drama, anyone's fool. Tonight, I'm just Rachel. And for now, that's enough.